hard to believe that the United States international skeet shooter Vincent Hancock is only 31 years of age. He burst onto the scene in 2005 as a 16-year-old. In his rookie year, he secured more victories than most champions make in a lifetime. As a teenager, he won an Olympic gold medal and became world champion. He's since won another Olympic gold and 3 more world championships, as well as a multitude of other titles. Let's find out a little more about one of the world's greatest ever ISSF competitors.
Vincent, thanks for joining us this evening, your time, this morning, my time.
No, I appreciate you guys having me.
Now, I want to start this interview by formally apologising to you, okay? This is something that's been on my mind for 6 years, okay? In 2014, I wrote an online book called The Top 20 Shooters of All Time.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote 25 stories for this and picked the top 80 in the world who I thought that I'd seen or in history of the sport, but I could only actually put 20 in the publication. But I wrote 25 stories, and one of the 25 stories I wrote was yourself. And another one, I'll tell you who one of the others was that I agonised about not putting in, was Danny Carlisle.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sort of hoping after 2014, when this was published, you'd just go away and everyone would forget about it. But you went on to win another couple of world titles, and it was a really hard thing to leave you out because you'd done so much by 2014, and you'd probably done more than I put guys like Matt Drake in that top 20 because he really reshaped ISSF skeet around the world. And Danny Carlisle, being a competitor in both trap and skeet, it was really hard to leave him and you out. And I'll apologise to Danny formally when I see him. But now I've got that off my chest, I can sleep, okay? If I write it again, and I'm getting a lot of pressure to write this again, I'll guarantee you'll be in it. And I don't know where it'll be in single digits in that 20, but can I take you back to 2005. 2005 is when I first met you. You're a 16-year-old kid. And 16-year-old kids weren't supposed to shoot like you shot. And the 2005 year, you shot in 7 international tournaments. You won 5 and finished second twice. The 2 you finished second in were scores of 148 out of 150 in both of those events. You finished second. In finals, you shot in 7 finals in 2005, and you missed 1 target. The question
I didn't even know that.
You remember which one it was? You only missed 1.
No, I'm sitting here trying to think of. I mean, I could have swore that I had missed more than that. That's interesting. It was in Rome, and the person that beat me was Ennio Falco, because I think I shot a 124, and then I had a 24 in the final. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest. I put Falco in that top 20. That's why. If you had have beaten him, you would have got in that top 20.
There it was.
Now, obviously, that's an amazing start. It's an amazing year for anyone. You won the Shooter of the Year that year, and deservedly so. Do you look back at that year and think it was really easy for you?
I mean, it honestly felt easy at the time. And I knew that by the end of the year, I was getting pretty tired. Yeah, but that was my first year competing overseas, and I had shot in 1 match as a junior in 2004 at a Grand Prix in Americana, Brazil, and that was the first time I had traveled outside of the country and competed on any kind of stage. And I won that shoot, but I didn't shoot very good at all. And it was just a junior Grand Prix. So as things were continually building, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And 2005 was kind of my coming out party. Of people were constantly telling me, you don't expect to go and win. And I mean, people on my own team were like, don't expect to do this. You shouldn't even be here. You're way too young. So don't expect to go out and win any of these things in your first try. It takes years to be able to do this. Well, as soon as somebody tells me that I can't do something, especially back then when I was a very, very motivated and driven and competitive and honestly a little bit arrogant teenager, it made me really fight to try to prove everybody wrong. So that was kind of one of my motivating factors and driving factors for 2005 and doing what I did.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because I often wonder, when you go through the ranks in a team as a junior, and then obviously now, being in the team for 15 years, how does that change in your role, and how do you now mentor the others coming through the team?
The big thing is telling them they can accomplish anything they set their mind to. Yes, there is, in doing a lot of the research, because I now coach as well. How many years does it take you from the time you start, and it's dependent on age and when you're starting, if you're a teenager or even 12 or 11 years old, or if you're an adult, the time spans can change. But the big thing is that you can accomplish, what my mom used to tell me, you can accomplish anything you set your mind to. And it all depends on how much work you put into it. Obviously, talent helps, but you get out of the sport what you put into it. And that's one of the things that I love about it so much, is that you don't have to be this amazingly talented, gifted, with God-given ability to be the athlete that you need to be coming into shooting sports. There's such a wide variety of people from all around the world that can be highly competitive in the shooting sports, and not one of them looks the same.
Yeah.
So it's fun to know that, and I try to relay that to all the students that I come in, or that I get in contact with, that come to me and ask me for advice, even if we're just on the range and in competition. And some of them come up and just say, "Hey, what can I do to get better?" Or I get messages on Instagram and Facebook all the time. "Hey, Mr. Hancock," I get called Mr. now. It's kind of weird. I'm not gonna lie. They're like, "Hey, what can I do to get better?" And the ones that I see, the ones that I can reply to, I just be honest with them.
In that book that I wrote, I had quite a few international skeet shooters. There was Yuri Surinov, Benelli, Falco, Matt Drake, Todd Graves, Shan Zhang. There were 6 that I can name. None of them look the same when they shoot. Vastly different. When you coach, do you try and coach your technique, or do you let your students find their technique themselves? Is there a set way that you actually want them to set up?
It's not. So none of the athletes that I coach look the same. We're all different, and I teach them a slightly different way of what I shoot, because I know that I have a couple of bad habits that end up costing me some targets, but I've learned over the years of how to kind of make up for that. But like I said, each one of them look different, and they all know that they're going to be different. I tell them that there is no one way. There's no perfect way that's going to allow you to break every target. So each person has their own hold points. Each person has their own gun fit. Each person has their own foot stance. Now we are constantly tweaking a little bit here and there. Typically, women they have more flexibility, so they can have their feet in a different position. Guys, especially ones that are thicker, have a harder time moving and making the transition. It's obviously, Skeet's a very mechanical game, and we have a lot more movement left to right than any of the other games that we shoot. So you have to get set up right. And so to answer your question, no, you don't. I don't necessarily teach just my technique. I focus on a economy of motion technique, if you can say that. It's the least amount of movement to get the desired outcome. Whatever that looks like for the shooter, that's what they're going to do.
Sounds like a really lazy way to shoot. That's what it sounds like.
Oh, I tell everybody, if it's hard, then you're doing it wrong. This is not a hard game, and if you're working hard, something is going wrong. It should be easy.
Coming back to that, it's quite an interesting, topic that I find at the gun clubs a lot in relation to the difference between what a lot of trap shooters do for training versus what a lot of skeet shooters do. And, I don't know if it's the same worldwide, but here, trap shooters tend to shoot round after round after round, whereas they see us skeet shooters walking around and, we might spend all day on stand 2 if we think that's the stand that we should be working on to improve to, get that stand or target particularly precise. What do you recommend, or what do you feel is best in terms of the, amount of rounds versus station training?
It's a constantly evolving thing, to be perfectly honest. And when I was a younger kid and shooting, I was shooting 250, 300 shells a day. And as I've gotten older, that's decreased considerably. I usually shoot now I say considerably, still 175 to 200 targets a day when I'm actively competing and practicing. And back in the day, when I was learning how to make all of those movements absolutely perfect, I had a lot of chunk training. There wasn't many rounds that were shot. There were some rounds, obviously. And it helped that we didn't have the finals that we have now. We just had regular rounds as our finals. So you could really focus on a lot of the same things. You could shoot a couple rounds at the beginning and then just chunk train the rest of the time. Like you said, stand on that station 2 and work on making a perfect move. Well, that's part of it. But as you go through the process and as you understand more about your mechanics, about the way that you attack a target, the way that you engage with your eyes, with your body, with your legs. I mean, all the way from your toes. As you learn all of that, you don't necessarily have to chunk train as much as you need to build your confidence in your rounds and your finals, but also understanding that throughout those rounds and finals, as you're feeling things that aren't necessarily perfect, you kind of put a mental check beside it and say, okay, I need to go back to that. I need to work on that specific move or that timing. No, it's not just based on timing. I pride myself on being able to hold targets, especially when they're out of place. But timing still plays a big part in it because of your transitions from your first target to your second target. So it's difficult to do the chunk training in trap. In doubles, that's all I used to do. I used to just stand there and shoot on one station and figure it out. And when I was shooting the double trap with the Army Marksmanship unit, so I got to watch Glenn and all those guys, do it back then and shoot with them. But in trap, it's really hard. In skeet, like you said, it's really easy to do that. But I would start there, and then you still have to incorporate the rounds in and the finals. But as you get better and better, it's more about building your confidence and knowing that, okay, I'm going to step out and I'm going to shoot 75 targets in rounds today. I go out and I shoot a 75 straight. And then I walk out and I say, I'm going to shoot a 60 target final, and I'm going to shoot 60 straight. It's more of having that confidence and saying, I can do this, and then going back and working on the little things.
Vincent, when you joined the Army, you were already the world champion. Do you consider joining the marksmanship unit made you a better shooter? I'm interested, I guess, how long did you actually spend with the unit, and why did you leave? And would you recommend that the path to go for an up-and-coming skeet shooter in the United States? Because let's face it, there hasn't been too many successful international skeet shooters in the United States that didn't come out of that unit, but you went there after you'd actually achieved a world champion, which I thought was a little odd.
So for me, I really didn't have much of a choice if I wanted to continue shooting. Now, it was obviously a great place to go, and I had planned on being there with 3 other athletes that were supposed to stay a little bit longer than they did, meaning within the first 6 months, I was pretty much shooting by myself once I got there. But my intention was I was going to join the top 3 shooters besides myself in the United States, and I was going to shoot for a quad. And it was basically getting myself through 2 Olympic Games, because I came in 2006 and really didn't get there until 2007 because I had to go back and graduate from high school in 2007. And so I joined when I was young. I was 17. And so once I did that, in 2008, as soon as the Olympic trials were done in March, all of them quit shooting. So I basically had nobody to shoot with. Sean Doolahary was still there, but he didn't really shoot very much. Let's be honest. But again, it was really my only option because we didn't have colleges with many colleges with teams, and none of them would allow me to shoot the amount that I needed to shoot. So my really only 2 options were join the Army Marksmanship unit, where I would get paid to shoot and I could shoot as much as I wanted, or stay at home and burden my parents with the task of paying for everything that I was going to do, all my travel, my college, and everything else. So really, when I looked back at it, my decision was easy. I was going to take the path of least resistance and the path that was going to allow me to accomplish my goal and my dream, which was the unit. Now, it vastly changed my perspective in a lot of ways and a lot of things. My dad was still my coach through 2008, although the unit had a coach there, Dean Clark, who helped me a tremendous amount. Being able to stand out back behind me out on the range every day and just give me feedback. Now, I was too stubborn to listen to anybody, so he knew that he wasn't going to be able to coach me. And I get on to any athlete and we're like, okay, look, you have to listen to me. You have to trust me. I know what I'm talking about. But even though I know that I was not that way back then, but thankfully he was willing to put that all aside and say, okay, what do you need? I just need you to be quiet and watch me and then tell me what you saw. And he was awesome at it. And he did a great job. And that's really what helped me get through 2012. And honestly, I was a better shooter in 2012 than I was in 2008. And I feel like the unit has helped me. They helped me get to where I am today, for sure.
Well, you won back-to-back Olympic gold medals, and you had to put up with Glenn Ella all of that time. That deserves a 3rd gold medal right there.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and I have to tell you a little secret. I was planning on going into the Army Marksmanship unit as well, and then I met this guy.
Nice.
So
okay, well, I get it.
Yeah. So Vinny, do you recommend it's for everybody? Is there a danger of burning out being in that unit? Because I don't see a lot of the guys. You mentioned Sean Dooley, Harry, who won a world championship. I know Sean well, but I remember spending a week there and all the guys in that room looked burnt out. It was nearly hard work for them to go and shoot at the range some days. But I always thought that's why you may have got out, because you were worried that you'd burn out.
No, for me, it was, I'm a very big family guy. And to answer your first question, is it for everybody? No, it's not. It is for very specific people that when one, relate to having to take orders and are okay with authority, even though I was not. It's still, you have to have that understanding of you have to abide. You're in the military and you're shooting for them, and you have to report to your superiors. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is there's a lot of expectations for you. Now, you're a part of probably the greatest individual shooting team the world has ever seen. They've produced so many medals, dozens and dozens of medals in the Olympic disciplines, and you're representing them, as well as the United States of America for the U.S. Army, as well as the Olympic team and all these other kinds of things. It's just one thing stacked on top of another. So there's a lot of pressure being there. And for me, I didn't get burned out from shooting. I got burned out more so on the traveling that's associated with it as well. There's a lot of other things that go into being in the marksmanship unit, recruiting, retention, doing videos, doing all of this and that, and traveling all over the place. And with me being a family man, I wanted to be home more. I wanted to be in more control of my schedule. And being in the Army, I was never going to be allowed to do that. So I made the choice, when it was a tough choice, to separate from the military and go out into the unknown. I had no idea when I separated in December 21st of 2012. I had no idea. I had no sponsors. I had no income, nothing. And I was just banking on, okay, we've got to make this work because I need to be home more. And when I'm actually home, I want to be home with my kids that I've missed so much with already in the first couple of years in their lives that I can't do that anymore. And thankfully, I've been very blessed and had some great sponsors and some great opportunities that have allowed me to do what I do.
Yeah, it's pretty admirable what you've done, because you started as a very young father, and it's clear that you're mature well beyond your years. As the girls are getting a little bit older, are they getting a greater sense of your achievements? And coming into this Olympic Games, I'm assuming they'd be super excited to share that with their friends and classmates.
And they are pretty excited about it. Our intention is to bring them to Tokyo as well. We were hoping, obviously, that we were already going to be there last month, but that's not the case. And next year, that's still the plan. So they know exactly what I do. They're really proud of me, and it's awesome because it makes me feel really happy every time I leave. They're like, "Okay, Daddy, go bring home a gold medal," like, every time. So I'm like, "Oh, all right, I'm gonna go do that." And thankfully, the last couple of years, I haven't let them down. But it is a lot of pressure. But they get excited every time they see medals. I mean, all of my national medals I give to them, and they get to keep them. They get to play with them and hang them up and stuff like that. And but they're always, the first thing they want to see is they want to see the medal. So it's really neat. And I've gotten to be a part of class ceremonies and things like that where I'll go in and I'll show them my Olympic medals and take pictures with the kids, stuff like that. And it's really neat, and they seem like they're really proud. So that's all I can ask for as a dad.
Yeah, absolutely. Vincent, a lot of people that are watching this are going to want to know about your technique as far as setting the gun up. The gun that you use, a Beretta DT11, it hasn't got a Beretta stock on it. You use an adjustable, it's an ergo stock, is it?
Yep, it's an ergo sign.
Stock. What's different with the gun? What inch barrel are you shooting with?
So it's just a standard, from the receiver forward, it's the standard DT11 black. So it's a 30-inch barrel. But excuse me, what you'll see, the chokes, people are going to think I'm crazy. I shoot IC and mod.
Right.
And it's probably a pretty tight IC and mod. So I usually recommend shooting somewhere around like an 8 thousandths and about a 15 thousandths. And mine are probably patterning close to 12 and probably 22 or 23 at this point.
And what sort of sight picture, what sort of point of aim? Are you shooting a 60-40 pattern, a 70-30? How high does it shoot?
I've been working slowly over the years to try to get that a little bit flatter, because back in the day I was shooting probably, I was having to float the target probably 4 or 5 feet.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a long time ago, back in 2005. So my style has changed. If you see videos of me shooting from '05 to now I'm much more upright. The gun is a lot further up in my shoulder, and my face is actually in the gun. Before, I remember in '05, there's videos. The gun isn't even close. It's like a half an inch off of my cheek, and I'm pulling the trigger and shooting these targets. So
Hey,
now I'm probably somewhere about 70-30.
in 2005, mate, you missed a target in a final. It clearly wasn't right. So I'm glad you changed it. And I bet a lot of people are happy. You've gone on since then, though. And are you a tinkerer with your gun? Do you change it weekly, monthly? No?
It hasn't changed in 8 years, 9 years. No, it's still the exact same. Now, I try to maintain the exact same weight between 170 and 175 pounds, although sometimes, admittedly, I go over, and then sometimes I go under. But like right now, I'm 172 pounds, and the gun fits me absolutely perfect at that weight. And so that's kind of where I try to maintain. But yeah, that gun hasn't changed since 2011 when I put that stock on that gun. Actually, when I put the stock on my DT10, and then I went to a DT11, and then now it's on a DT11 black. It's the same exact stock. I haven't changed it. It just goes from one gun to the next.
In terms of maintaining your weight, do you do that through nutrition? Do you, like to gym, or, what is your other?
It's a little bit of both.
Yep.
It's a little bit of both. So it's, this year so far, because there's been a combination of a couple of things. I've hurt a couple of things over the last few years. It's like, so I hurt my back really bad when I was in the Army when I was 18 or 19. I was really early. So I've had a lot of back issues and a lot of shoulder issues through the time I've been shooting. And a couple of years ago, I guess in December of 2018, actually, I was on crutches for about 2 weeks because I couldn't walk because of my back. And so I've been slowly trying to get myself back to a place where I can do more things, because I love to run. And I like being in the gym as well, but I like doing more body weight type things. So our physical therapist, Matt Zanis, has been really instrumental in helping me get more flexibility in my body, which has helped my back tremendously, and my shoulder. My shoulder is probably the biggest thing that he's helped. I've gotten more flexibility in there, more range of motion. And so now, I don't remember a day for about a 6-year stretch that, my shoulder wasn't in pain and my neck wasn't in pain. So now I can go most days, and probably count the days that I've been in real pain on one hand in the last year. So that's been a great thing. But trying to work through all of those has been difficult. So this year has been kind of stressing more nutrition than anything, and trying to work my way back up into getting back into the gym and doing more things, and getting my lungs back to where they need to be cardio-wise.
They say success breeds success. And in the US, with the depth of the shooters that you've had over the last at least 3 or 4 decades, sometimes it can come back to bite you. I noticed last year you didn't make the US World Championship team. You won 2 World Cups overseas with tremendous scores, but you don't need to have too many bad days at the US trials to miss out on the team. And whether your back obviously might have been a part of that. But that's something that I think obviously you probably won't admit, but you'd look back and be very proud at seeing the people that you've been able to inspire to come up and make life very difficult for you. And I know Kimberly Rohde would have the same issue. She's, around her, built an absolute impenetrable US women's team. Is that something, though, that you are, do you acknowledge the fact that you've always got to be on your A game there, or you could be watching the plane leave without you?
No, absolutely. It's very difficult to make teams here. And it truly is. They shoot just amazing scores here in the US to try to make the teams. So like last year when I didn't make the team, it was, my back was bothering me a lot the last 2 days, and I suffered because of that. But still, I shot a 240, I think it was. Maybe it was a 239 out of 250. So not terrible scores, but I was 3 targets behind going into the final. And so when I'm having to compete against 242s or 243s, and they're averaging above 120 over the course of 4 days, it's difficult. And then going into the first selection match of this Olympic trials, and I shoot a 245 and I'm in second. I'm tied for second. So averaging 122.5 and I'm tied for second. It's just ridiculous scores at this point. And the same thing with the women. We probably have, realistically speaking, there are amazing shooters all around the world, men's and women's, but we probably have 6 of the top 10 female shooters in the entire world competing just to make our teams right now. It's crazy.
Yeah, you can't help but have a good team if you've got that depth. Do you realise when you missed out on the 2019 team, the Italians had a national day off to celebrate that?
That's my favorite place to go shoot. I love Lonato. Two of my world championships are there, and one of my world records is there. So I think the worst I've done is a bronze out of 4 or 5 or 6 trips or something like that. So I love that place.
So that leads me into the next question. I mean, the Italians have a completely different selection policy than the US team. Your team is picked first past the post. You hit enough targets, you're in the team. The Italians would never leave Vincent Hancock at home. If you were shooting for Italy and you'd never shot badly at Lonato, you'd just have to nominate at your trials and you'd be in the team. Which is a better system, yours or theirs?
It's difficult. I sit on the ethics committee for USA Shooting, so I am very much so for fair play. I've never been a huge fan of committee selections, but over the years and seeing all the different countries that do it and seeing the success that especially Italy has with it, it's hard to deny that they have a good procedures or a set of procedures. So I think it's all in perspective and what you're trying to accomplish. They've done extremely well. If I had to put a country that is probably the icon of modern day skeet shooting, it would be Italy, and probably just skeet shooting in general for the history of it. So it's hard to argue with it. But at the same time, our team is extremely strong for a reason. And it's because I believe that we build depth by giving various athletes opportunities to say, hey, if you come out here, you're not going to be told no. You don't have to have somebody like you to make the team like some other sports do. You're not going to be judged. You're going to be picked off of who is the best athlete. That's why our competitions are so long, because the cream will always rise to the top. And based on one shoot, it's not enough. 2 or 3 shoots, that's enough. Of the 250 targets that we shoot in our matches here, the cream will rise to the top 9 times out of 10, if not more than that. And that's kind of the way we're looking at it now. Obviously, I'm open to change. I'm open to looking at if there's a better way to do it. By all means, let's do it. But until we can find that perfect solution, we're going to keep doing what we're doing.
Do you have one competitor that you like beating more than anyone else? Just assume no one else is watching this. Is there one guy that you love seeing below you on the dais?
No, it's honestly, I consider everybody my friends. I really tried to make sure that from the day that I stepped on foot on the range overseas, that I was making friends. And I remember hearing all the stories on days past about how this team was our enemies and we had to go and beat these people, and you can't ever let these people win. That's not how it is for me. For me, if I can go out and I can beat my expectations, then my expectations are perfection every single time I step on the field, then I know that I'm going to win. And if somebody beats me, then they absolutely deserve it.
You have a very big reputation for being the nice guy, and it is very admirable. But, can we dig deep and try and get some dirt? Do you have any, funny story? And if you can't go with your funniest memory, I guess your most memorable one.
There's a lot of things. Some of them I absolutely will not share here. One of the things that is probably the most embarrassing thing for me that you guys are digging deep, so you're getting one that only probably half the U.S. team knows, like the close-knit U.S. team knows, is in Brazil in 2007, I think it was, at the Pan American Games. It was my first Pan Am Games, and we were out on Copacabana Beach. We were out swimming, and Jeff Holguin was teaching me how to body surf these giant waves. I mean, I came from the Gulf of Mexico in Florida, where it's like the biggest wave is about like that. That's about the biggest wave I ever saw. So these 6 or 7 foot waves are just crushing me, right? And I can't figure this out. Well, the rip current underneath is like ripping you out too, because it's sucking back in there for the next wave. Well, Jeff's like, dude, just stand up. And it's like 6 inches deep, but I'm over here like wallowing in it, and I can't figure out how to get out of it. Well, before he tells me this, the reason he tells me this is as I'm body surfing through, I get pummeled like 3 times, and I'm just, all of a sudden I get ripped out by this rip current. Well, as I'm tumbling, I feel my shorts go completely off, right? And I'm like, oh no. So I finally get a foothold. I'm able to stand up. Well, I have nothing on. Like when it went off, it took everything. And I wasn't planning on getting in the water at that point in time, but I just had like some basketball shorts on, some underwear, and then a shirt that I came there with. Well, I've got nothing. So I'm like, every time the waves come in, I'm searching around. Every time they go out, I'm having to turn around and cover myself because the whole beach is laughing at me and making fun at me. And they're speaking different languages. Well, finally, this lady finds my underwear and she holds them up and she starts giggling at me, right? And of course, it's I forget when it was. It's like October, November, or something like that. I can't even remember when it was. Honestly, it was sometime later in the year 2007. So I'm wearing snowman and Santa Claus underwear, right? So that's what I have to put back on. Thankfully, I have something to put on. And I'm walking around Copacabana Beach in my underwear until we can find another set of swim shorts in the market. So I had half the U.S. team was there laughing. There was a Canadian team there laughing at me. Like, there was just tons of people. That was by far my most embarrassing experience of my life, and one that now the entire world knows. So,
How did you go in that competition? Did you win?
I did win. Actually, it was me and Todd Graves. We were tied, and we ended up having a shoot-off, and I beat him in the shoot-off. So that was fun.
Vinny, I won't keep you here all night, but one question I do want to know. You've won 4 world championships and in 3 different final scenarios, the old final scenario, then the semi-final scenario, and then the current one. Which final scenario do you like best?
That's tough because I really liked the one at the beginning because I like the fact that we could carry over our scores. I did like the fact that you work for 2 days, 2 long days of competition, and then you get to carry that hard work over into the final. However, I really like the new finals too. I really like the 60 target final. I was not a fan of the 16-16 at all. There was just too little targets and too much movement going back to 0. So I do like the fact that we have the bibs where we can go into it, 1st through 6th and have a little bit of an advantage, at least in ties. And I kind of wish we could go back to your score carries over and then you shoot the 60 targets now. If we could combine the 2, it would be awesome. But at the same time, it makes for more drama. Now, I get it. But at the same time, I've always been more of a marathon guy versus a sprint guy. I like being able to take in that advantage that I've worked really, really hard for and take it into something knowing I have maybe a 1 target advantage of getting a gold medal, but I'll take 1 target all day long.
Did it take you long to learn to shoot the reverse pairs?
Not really, because I used to shoot them all the time anyway, just for practice and for fun. What it did take me a while, probably a good 4 years, was figuring out a really good, consistent way to hit the second targets on those reverse pairs. I've got a couple of small technique things that I do that have helped me out tremendously that I've passed on to my students now too. And one of my students just made the Olympic team with me as well. So she's been able to take it. She shoots really good in the finals. And then one of my other students that lives here right next to me, so both of them live next to me, they're constantly shooting 58 plus in these finals and really pushing me to do better in them. So it's a kind of a combination of, now I've learned this, but now I'm teaching them and now they're pushing me even more. So I'm like, dang it. I pride myself on teaching them everything that I know, but at some point in time, you're like, crap, maybe I shouldn't have taught them everything.
I do actually wonder, do you find it challenging to turn off your coach's, mind? We all know that to be a really successful shooter, the best way to do that is to try and, keep the man in your head at bay. And obviously as a coach, it's quite the opposite. You need to deliver a lot of information at times to be able to get people to understand how to make the movement or to get the precision correct. Do you find it hard to sort of take your coach's hat off and then put the athlete's hat back on?
So I catch myself a lot the last 2 years of I'm standing behind other athletes that are competing. And I'm like, oh, you need to have your whole point further in. Okay, you're going to miss that one even before they get started. And I'm like, you had a different whole point there, and just different things like that, and seeing different things and nitpicking. And I'm like, no, you got to stop that. Just don't do that. Focus on what you have to do.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that doing the coaching that I've done, it's allowed me to pick through myself so much better, because I was struggling for a little while back in 2014, probably 2013, 2014, even a little bit in 2016. I wasn't coaching very much during those times. And I saw my scores go a little bit down because I wasn't understanding exactly what I was doing. Well, now that I'm working with these athletes on a weekly basis, if not daily basis, then they're shooting very similar to what I do, similar techniques, just obviously they're doing a little bit different things in their own. And I see, okay, like I'm harping them on something, and it reminds me whenever I'm shooting of, hey, I need to make sure that I'm doing that too.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows me to break everything down on a super basic level. So that is basically my mental routine now, is what is my process, and going through that process and making sure that I'm hitting every key element of the thing that I know that it takes me to break a target. It's helped me out a lot.
Vinny, how has the worldwide COVID crisis affected your preparation for next year's Olympics?
It's drastically changed, honestly, my 5-year plan from 2020 through 2024, because my intention is to compete all through this year and then take off like I did in 2017, the end of 2016 and all of 2017, take off from competitive shooting. And now that's not an option. Well, obviously, with the Olympics being next year and then quotas potentially starting up the year after that, we have to make the team immediately after the Olympics, basically. And I'm going to have maybe a couple months before the selection match or the first selection match for the 2022 team. So we've got to be prepared. We've got to be ready. And so this year, I decided, you know what, there is no competitions anyways. There's nothing for me to shoot for. So I went ahead and took off this year. And I've shot little bits and pieces here and there since March of this year. And what it's allowed me to do is I was starting to get to a point where I wasn't wanting to go and train hard every day at the beginning of this year. And I was struggling a little bit because of it. And I think that it's one of the reasons why I didn't shoot any better than I did at our final Olympic selection match. Because the first month that I started, I think I was like on my rounds, I think I was like 600 and something targets straight. I didn't miss for like 3 or 4 weeks on my rounds. And I shot probably 10 or a dozen 60s in finals just over the course of that first month. But then slowly but surely, as I started shooting more and more and more, my score started going down. And I'm used to averaging, somewhere between 123 and 125 on my rounds. And it was getting down to 121 to 124, which is not my normal. And I know that's usually when I'm in a mindset of, if I'm driven and I'm motivated, I can shoot really good scores consistently the entire time. But if I'm not, I just can't maintain my focus. So, and I've never been one to admit to being burnt out, but looking back over the course of my career, I can see that, and I can see what happens to it. So my thought process is, I'm going to be driven next year. I'm taking off this time. I've already got the itch to go back and shoot. So that's a great thing. And I'm going to take a few more months off, and then I'm going to start back up heavy training again and get ready for next year.
Vincent, I'm not thinking there's any chance at all that you won't put in 100%. I went and printed off your results off the ISSF website, and I burnt my printer out. I've got no ink left. But the one stat that it's an amazing stat, and if anyone that goes onto the ISSF site, if they haven't looked at your page, it's worth looking at. The one event that really
had to bring it up, didn't you? You had to bring it up. I knew you were going to bring it up.
I did, because it is amazing. You've come 6 times runner-up in the World Cup final.
Every time I shoot really good, and then somebody usually shoots a flipping world record score to beat me out of it. It's happened like 3 times. It's so frustrating. But honestly, that's what I keep telling everybody, is that so in 2008 and in 2016, I got gold, or 2012, sorry, 2008 and 2012, I got gold at the Olympics, and then I got silver to the guy that got silver at the Olympics in the World Cup final. So that switched. I'm like, you know what? I'll just keep that. I'll just keep trying to get the gold in the Olympics. I don't care if I never win a World Cup final. As long as I can keep winning the big one, then I'm all right. But no, it is something that obviously I would love to get one of the big globes. And that has been the one thing that's eluded me in my career. But I really can't.
Did Glenn Eller remind you of that? Did Glenn Eller bring that up all the time?
All the time, yes. He's like, how many big globes do you have?
Ask him to show you his gold.
Shut up, Glenn. I'm not going to say anything right now. That was okay.
Vinny, we really appreciate your time this evening. It's been intriguing to listen to your thoughts, and it's hard for me to conceive that you're only 31 years of age. We wish you all the best at Tokyo next year, and we're very grateful for the insight that you've given us.
No, I appreciate you guys having me. I really do. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Vinny.